Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is another scene for Perth, which is set at the Third Eye Bookstore, just outside of the university, which is run by Leon Harris. Uh, I don't actually think Heike's been here with any of his characters, so it's in a mall at this time of night. Most of the mall is closed, but this part is open. So there's a storefront. It's got a little doorbell on it.
After having had a chance to freshen up and get his second most favorite sweater on, the third most favorite sweater having suffered a serious wardrobe malfunction. Previously, Creel's stopping by, as agreed. Bing.
And out looks a sort of younger-looking girl. She sort of looks outside and presses a button. Speaks. You can see she's speaking something towards a little speaker on the panel. And then comes over and opens the door and says, "You are Mr. Creel?"
Yes, I was hoping to catch Mr. Harris.
Yes, he's in the back room right now. And I'm Stacy Keach, by the way. Nice to meet you.
Oh, pleasure to make your acquaintance.
Shakes it, and then she says, "All right, back to checking up on that guy. Sorry, got some work to do." She goes back to the computer and starts typing away. And Leon calls from a somewhat open back door. "Please come on in."
Walks in, closes the door behind himself, just in case it's a regular worker instead of someone in the know.
The this room obviously tends to have a bit of use in something that's supposed to look a bit more spiritual. It's got off to one side you can see a crystal. There's a table off to one side. On the table there's a crystal ball and what looks like a tarot deck, and there are black curtains that are currently pulled up. And Leon is currently sitting down, puts down a book as you come in. So, if I understand the scuttlebutt, you're the new Primogen for the Bruja?
Primogen pro tempore.
Well, yes, but as much as I like Stoneheart, he was an idiot.
Siding with an Autarchus, apparently in a full Primogen council.
Yeah, I heard about that one from James. And then there was the whole frenzying bit, but no.
Well, like I've said, if it were only that a Bruja frenzied in a meeting and got staked and nobody got hurt, I'd be personally, and I think most of the Bruja would be raising a lot more hell if it were only that, and he'd still be staked. But it's not only that now, is it?
No, and very few people think it's a good idea to set yourself up for a situation where you owe 4 boons to an Archon.
I didn't know how he managed that. I wasn't here for that.
He wanted to get Right of Creation. Or Right of Race. Creation.
I don't think it should be that expensive.
He had, let me put it this way, He was still immortal when he was at war in the Middle East. And this wasn't in the 90s.
All right. Young.
Very young. And impulsive, as many of your clan, especially the young ones, tend to be.
Well, occasionally it is a benefit, occasionally it's a hindrance.
No, it's just, you'd think someone with the knowledge of military tactics he had would be, well, better at thinking tactics outside of the military.
The difference between tactics and strategy, I imagine.
True, true. Mind you, all my military experience is battlefield surgery, so...
My military experience comes from Sun Tzu and a lot of movies.
Well, at least the Sun Tzu is pretty solid. I actually remember reading that while we were...
I'll have to add that to the list as Krill taking a pen.
I read Sun Tzu and... what was it? And Musashi. Read them both in the original, too.
Original language?
Yes. I
envy you.
I can speak a number of languages. Among them are Mandarin and Japanese. Also, Russian, Navajo, Breton, and Latin. So, interesting mix of languages.
Something for almost anything I could come up with.
What was that?
Something for almost everything I could come up with, except for maybe Africa.
Let's see here. Yep, no African languages, but there's several subgroups of languages there anyways. None of the... Well, wait, no. Navajo is a Native American. None of the Siberian languages, really. Nothing Altaic. But yeah, I've got a good smattering of...
an impressive collection of... what would be a correct way of communication?
Yes. It's a pity that almost no one speaks Breton anymore. Not even the Bretons. France has done a fairly good job of killing that language. Then again, there's not a lot of people who speak Cornish either.
Or Navajo.
But, sorry, got sidetracked. I'm guessing there was something you were wanting?
I have a long list of specific titles and some unspecific things I'd like to address. Okay. If you wish to review the list in its entirety.
Looks at the list and sort of glances through. Okay, interesting collection. A lot of these, you know, not that hard to get. There's modern printings and translations. Some of these will, of course, be a little bit harder. And some of these are, again, generalities, which I'm sure you can find something.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and I'm guessing you're looking mostly into Eastern mysticism. Any specific branch of that?
Let me answer that with a simple thing. I have reached probably as far as I can, outside of the conditioning of my body. which probably could be a little bit better. In the external art, I need to focus on the internal art in order to break some barriers for the external development.
Right. Okay. So let's see. So I'm guessing you're actually studying a martial art, or have close to
I have experience in quite a few. I have some knowledge in those that I've mentioned, but what I know either needs a refresher or needs to be really, really focused on.
Okay.
A young man is always more interested in the outer world.
Usually, there are exceptions. So, because let's see here. I mean, when it comes down to it, there are, depending on regions, several different subtypes of Eastern mysticism, and that's not even touching into the recent stuff that started taking Christianity in. But the biggest ones are, of course, Buddhism, which can pretty much be found everywhere in Asia that is not, well, to the north of China.
Probably also decent amounts within my own head. I've found it works relatively well for maintaining a calm perspective to the world around myself.
It's remarkably good at that, yes. There's several major branches of Chinese mysticism, but the biggest one I'm thinking of right now is Taoism. Shinto it's almost more effectively an institutionalized set of peasant beliefs. Not that it's not actually speaking against it, it's very interesting, but it's also very syncretistic. It picks up bits and pieces of everything else and adds it in.
And not likely to directly relate to what I am seeking to establish for myself.
One question, though, if you're aiming for a certain amount of calm, have you ever considered Jainism?
I imagine I'll have to give it at least a few books worth of a try.
Like Buddhism, it originates in India. Unlike Buddhism, it never spread that far outside of it. But it's, I believe, the youngest of the three major Indian religions. It also very much focuses on balance and, well, not so much doing no harm, but minimizing harm. Gandhi was a Jainist, for example.
I imagine that will have to be of interest, though like previously, I'm more inclined to the application for the internal art.
Yes. Hinduism, interestingly enough, is very much like, in many ways, it's very much like, well, a lot of the other pre-Christian religions that you found in Europe. It's just that was separated by location. And then there's the possible tie to Zoroastrianism, but that's a question of whether it's actually tied or it's just a linguistic effect.
And we are shortly approaching the limit where I have to study every possible branch under the sun.
Let's see here. As I recall, Buddhism has several different branches, but honestly, outside of the people who are actually Buddhists, it doesn't really matter which of them you follow. So bits and pieces of all of them can work. I'll be honest, a lot of my personal studies have been focusing on Western mysticism, which is it's like we're both talking about the same thing, but in different languages. Is essentially the difference between the two types of mysticism. Um, but yeah, I at least know some of the stuff, and I can probably now some of it, if you're interested, I could teach you directly. Some of it, I could point you to people who would be willing to teach it, and part of it, I can provide you with books. But basically, Eastern mysticism is a tradition that has been written down for about 2 millennia longer than Western mysticism. So there's a lot to look into. And I think Heike just vanished. Yep, and he went poof. Alright, we'll just hold on until he comes back then. Yay! Do. Well,
Oh, see, apologies. I had to reestablish.
I figured something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, I realized it was one of those things like, I don't think his face has moved in 30 seconds.
And of course it was a silly face, wasn't it?
Mildly silly.
Then again, I think I just set myself up to be insulted. Okay. I'll copy paste that stuff. Where were we?
Okay, what was the last thing you remember?
Discussion about Indian faiths, followed by Creel going, well, that might not be applicable immediately, at least.
Right.
And we're closely approaching the point where I would have to start studying it all.
Yeah.
Which is going to be counter-effective.
Yeah.
Actually, Creel can go. I'm specifically interested in the 5 elements, both theory and application within the human body.
So which set of 5 elements? The Japanese or the Chinese?
I might have to fold in that one and go both.
Okay, because the Japanese 5 elements is actually, if you include the 5th element in Western belief of Aether, pretty much the same as that. Whereas, if I remember correctly, the Chinese 5 elements include metal and wood.
Old form.
And
Metal guts for wood.
And do not include air.
Air is in that combination of heat and water. Well, fire and water, but same thing applies.
Well, but yeah, that's from, if I remember correctly, the Wuxing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, but yeah, for Buddhist stuff,
That is more for the, should I say, philosophical side, to
yes.
maintain a certain level of calm, which admittedly is relatively difficult for a Bruja.
In that case, the Tripitaka is definitely worth reading, but the full set is, well, up to 50 volumes. There's also the Mahayana Sutras, which are somewhat easier to get. There's essentially a lot of stuff, and even Taoism borrowed a bit from Buddhism, and then I believe Mahayana ended up borrowing a bit back from Taoism. But the Wuxing, that itself is very much Taoist. And, oh, I know. I keep on thinking the wrong way. You want, specifically for that thing, you want Zen Buddhism.
Okay.
For that, let's see. There are a number of them. That one was less of a organized religion, at least as far as I understand it, more of a set of teachings. Although the one thing I remember, one of the better koans was before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Reminding you that even if you're seeking enlightenment, you need to keep your feet on the ground.
Or like it's occasionally been, well, like it was pointed to myself, too much self-study leads to self-centered study.
Yes, that can be true. Some people can study on their own and do it amazingly well. They are rare, though. And even then, it's only in specific cases. But yeah, no, as far as books go, I can get you most of these if you want. There's actually a lot of good modern writings on Zen Buddhism that will help getting that in. And one of the big things about Zazen is essentially making thought and action identical. And this is something that some people are able to do without even bothering it. There have been stories of, people going into a battle trance, or even basketball players getting in the zone, what they describe as essentially a state of zazen, or however it's actually pronounced. It's been a while. And I remember Beijing when it was still called Peking. So, but yeah. Everything else should be relatively simple to get.
Pressure point maps.
Yeah, actually, that is not that hard to get.
It should not be, but I would need those in several categories of study.
Yes. Actually, one of the easiest ways to get that would be... I'm pretty sure I can find a manual that covers both chiropractic and acupuncture, because they both work on that principle. So yes, those are more medical texts, obviously, but even so, when it comes down to it, pressure points are a thing that you can actually tell and, well,
manipulate.
Let's just say once or twice I tried one while doing surgery and found it to be quite effective, especially when, accidents occasionally happen, even to the best surgeon. All right, but yeah, I'm assuming you, of course, I'm assuming you can pay the prices for shipping and all this.
Do you have an estimate again?
I'll come up with an itemized list and send it to you. Do you use email, or do you still prefer to receive physical letters?
Ooh. Email will probably work better and be sooner read.
Exactly. Sooner read, easier to manipulate. bits and pieces so they're doing it correctly. And yes, I'm not quite fully caught up on everything that computers can do, but I can tell you this: if I had a personal computer back during World War II, I could have saved a lot more lives.
Then again, if personal computers were a thing during the World War II, things could be different.
It would have been a very different war.
Actually, writes a long name. I think I can get that, like, registered that address, so I'll just use that for the books.
Okay. But yeah, once I've got the prices for each of these, and I'll also be able to tell you for the general ones, list of possibles and their prices. And yeah, I'll get that back to you as soon as I can. Stacy's still working on that, but we've got the computer at home, so I can work on that. All right, good. So, anything else you wanted to talk about?
Well, now that the important things are taken care of, how's the clan?
Say again?
How's the clan doing?
Oh, we're doing fairly well. Yours?
We had a little oopsie in the last Primogen Council meeting. You might have heard.
Yes, I kind of did. But when it comes down to it, that was an oopsie that was going to hit here eventually.
Yeah, better for it to happen soon than to end up having to deal with it later.
Yes. I was trying.
Because
It was like watching someone who had played 3 games of chess try to mate a grandmaster in 12 moves, and thinking he could do it.
well, there is a difference between self-confidence and self-knowledge.
Yes. I have had a very long time to work on my self-knowledge.
You might be able to tell I'm working on
Yes.
it. The other thing is, I am, well, since we're just talking the city stuff, I'm under the understanding that the Primogen of the Malkavians currently holds, well, Malkavians as a clan / the Primogen holds claim over most medical facilities.
Yes.
As specifically as a domain, a certain one in South Perth.
Yes.
Might be a thing we need to discuss.
I'll let James know you wish to speak with him.
And since he's going to ask and wish to know, and I have no problem informing you of it, I hold South Perth as a neighborhood as a domain. I have no intention or need, or quite frankly interest, to challenge the existence of a domain within the domain. For that, I will be seeking nothing, and generally no problems. And as far as I'm concerned, if he wishes to have visitors, as long as they don't eat someone on the street,
Yes. Well,
I will not be complaining.
Yes, he is very discreet. So.
Now, if there is, I'll extend the offer anyhow. If there is something to be discussed, it's possibly the option of me assisting if he needs someone removed from his domain.
I think he would most likely appreciate that.
After all, if someone is not respecting his domain, they are probably unlikely to respect mine either.
Well, they're unlikely to respect any domain, and, well, it'd be a problem to deal with at one point, if not another.
So, I would imagine that would be of mutual benefit.
Yes, yes. Now, and he is prone on occasion to becoming a bit too engrossed in some of his work, but when it comes down to it, I know where he becomes engrossed in his work and can find him if need be. So,
I am in no great rush personally.
he's been. Let's just say he's got most of his work taken care of for the moment. I'm not foreseeing needing any assistance in that in the near future. But yes. Also, let's see here. Well, and you've already met Asher.
Oh, he participated in the hunt?
That is what I heard from the...
And did very well from what I first suspected.
I'll be honest, my skill with firearms has gotten a little rusty, and I never really learned hand-to-hand combat that well.
If you need a hand in that, I'll be happy to help.
Yes, no, that I may take you up on that at some point. I was considering asking Stoneheart, but then Stoneheart, well...
Had that thing that made me have to get into this position of talking of domains and stuff.
Not entirely sure how... Let's just say I'm hoping that at the worst he was only stupid. And stupidity can do a lot of harm, but...
At least it's to a degree excusable over malicious intent.
Exactly. No, and you know, we'd fought together when we were taking the city from the Anarchs, so...
Coda member, I take it then?
Yes, well... At one point we had 3 Primogen in our coterie, and I was a hand. I'm still hand, and now we're down to 2 Primogen in our coterie.
No?
Well, you've met Rafat. And then the Nosferatu Primogen is also in our members.
The sniper.
Yes. I worked very well as a spotter.
I would imagine.
But
he was also in on the hunt.
Yes, he's... Well, despite the fact that I can remember being in 2 world wars, not so much for fighting myself. But yes.
I'm more into the benefits it brings. Not so much in the actual application. It is a side benefit, if that is a way to describe it.
Yes.
Uh, what else was there? I'll have to ask yourself, what do you make of the prince?
He is quite, well, there's a small chance that he's actually delusional, but that's actually present in most vampires anyways. If you were to Google him, you would find who he says he was in life, which was someone who history says lost his head during the Reign of Terror.
Then again, well,
Yes.
a kindred good for such documents.
Yes. That said, he is genteel, very polite and proper, and for some reason likes me. Possibly because I came to him in contrast to Stoneheart.
Oh, well, it is good to know that the former Primogen has benefited someone. With his mere presence, even.
Yes. But yes, as far as I can tell, he actually likes me, and to be perfectly honest, when you run into an elder of any clan liking you, that's something that should worry you.
Duly noted.
But especially so with the Tremere. The Ventrue think they have a good handle on politics. What the Ventrue have is a good set of vampiric disciplines. The Tremere have a good handle on politics.
Wow. You could reverse the statement.
I learned a few details of, well, not quite ancient history, but medieval history from my sire, with his own particular take on everything.
Oh,
He's. I believe at one point he said he would happily kill all the Tremere if it weren't for the fact that they kill Shaughnessy.
which was in evidence today. Well, torpor, but, well, it might be. Or then it's just a gangrel.
Wait, the Autarchus might have been a Shaughnessy?
Possibly Sabat. I think name Abel was mentioned. And that I'm left under the impression was something that would have been heard by some of the packs during the last days of the liberation of the city. Coveries. Packs. Coveries.
There are a number of things
Yeah.
I would like to not happen. Among them are my sire coming up with a reason to come here.
On the positive side, well, my suspicion comes from the fact that they did have very peculiar animals with it. And having had to sample a few dogs, I'm somewhat suspicious that the bigger variants of the dingoes were just dogs.
Right.
A bit too deep a draught, if you catch my meaning.
Yes. No, well. Hopefully, Velez will decide not to grace our city, because if there's one thing that's likely to get him out here making my life, well, unlife miserable. It's the promise of a chance to kill Shamasei.
Well, if you wait a little while, since it was delivered already to the prince in Torpor.
Oh, I don't intend on making huge offers to the prince just in order to gift wrap a present for my sire.
No, I'm thinking more along the lines that if the prince already has it, why the chances, even if it turns out to be something besides a gangrel, chances of anyone else to get a say on how it leaves this world, probably quite low.
Oh yes, no, it's more along the lines of if there's a chance that the Sabbat will show up, and especially any of the Shamasei. He has a grudge against them for reasons I've never fully understood.
Personal grudges are quite often just that.
Yes. No, and once I'm fairly certain the only reason he has not been, well, blood hunted in a dozen cities is because he's very effective at taking down the Shamasei. So.
One of the individuals who is very welcome into a city during the times of war, and very happily sent on his way as a war hero when peace comes to be.
Yes, exactly.
From what I keep hearing, it seems we have something similar happening here.
Yes. But, in any case, sorry, just imagining the idea of him showing up here is kind of already putting me a bit on edge.
Understandable. I would probably not myself be too fond of the notion of my sire coming over and giving a good hard look to what I'm doing. And mine was, after all, a person who sort of saved my life.
Well, considering that my sire decided I wasn't a complete waste of blood, that was exactly how he phrased it, too. So.
You are not a complete waste of blood, so you may keep being not a complete waste of blood.
Yes.
Be very, very careful that I do not change my mind.
Along those lines, but I've heard he actually seems somewhat impressed at what I've done, but I'm happy for him to be impressed from a distance.
Well, I do not imagine that the kind would be happy either to have their parents show up and start going, well, you did that wrong.
Oh, I don't know about your sire, but mine is an elder who, at the very least, claims to remember before there was a Camarilla.
Mine's not so forthcoming of his history.
Oh. The main reason I'm able to pick that up is things that he said here and there. I'm not quite the scholar that I would have to be to get more details.
Well, mine encouraged me to get into the internal arts
Yes.
quite a while sooner than that I'm here and now doing.
Well,
Well, he didn't push me towards it too hard.
well, the inner arts are very useful, and honestly, they well, teaching them to others keeps me fairly comfortable.
I'm, I'm finding that I might have to actually focus more on teaching the external arts to the kind to make certain I stay comfortable.
Um, let's just say that I don't teach them anything that would put us in danger.
Well, I have yet to hear of anyone complaining that Tai Chi Chuan was a breach of the masquerade.
Oh, no. But mostly I offer spiritual guidance to them, and well, I have a unique perspective on that, which a number of them seem to appreciate. And that has opened a number of doors for me, and hopefully will continue to open doors.
Let's hope that remains then. Uh, what
That
else was there? Are the Nosferatu really in such bad with the prince?
from what I hear, he was somewhat offended that the Primogen could not make the Primogen Council meeting.
But that's admittedly the first meeting in the city, from what I gather.
Yes.
Admittedly, the only promotion who couldn't make it, but still, didn't they send a hand?
They'd sent the hand, but he still chose to be offended.
Hmm.
Well, and I myself nearly ended up representing my clan, but I think he would have been less offended with me because, well, among other things, he likes me.
Well, the way things I think went, I might have ended up being a hand had I been very, very greedy about it and elected to step forward to the discussion we had, and then it would have been a matter of dice whether it was me or Stoneheart in that meeting. Could have been a very different way of things. I have hard time figuring whether it would be better or worse if I had been there as a hand instead of Stoneheart being there as a privilege.
Well, let's just say that the Bruja clan would owe less major boons to the prince.
We owe one major boon to the prince. From the seat of the Primogen, we owe at this time 3 to the Archon.
As I understood it, the Archon had transferred them all to the prince.
I am somewhat suspicious that is the case.
Well, that's what
The
I.
Archon first would have to tell it to the Ruja Primogen seat for it to be valid.
Well, at the time. Well, in any case.
I have the reason I'm somewhat suspicious. I'm aware that the Archon transferred those wounds from the Primogen in person to the Primogen seat. I'm not aware of any other transactions on those wounds.
Well, this is just what I heard, and I may have heard wrong. So. And it's not as if we really have any harpies at the moment to keep track of prestation.
Well, there is the Keeper of Elysium, who apparently is the.
Well, yes, there is her. And she is at times frightening. And keep in mind, this is the Malkavian hand who says this.
Well, not to be insulting, and I truly try not to be insulting here, but it might be for a very good reason or a very good reason that I cannot grasp.
Well, to put it this way, I would not call Stoneheart a coward, but he did not relish meeting James.
No, right?
James Pierce, the current Malkavian Primogen.
I've heard it mentioned a few times that your current Primogen is a cordial man.
Oh yes.
Where it's mentioned with a certain inflections of tone, which I think will serve your clan very, very well.
Oh yes. He is very, very friendly and self-effacing at times.
I wish there were more bourgeois Primogen I was aware of. I could say the same. Then again, that just might explain why the notion is scary.
Yes. Well, and among other things, although he does understand the vagaries of the political game, even if he tries to pretend he doesn't. In fact, I think you'll often find that the people who understand the political game the most are the ones who don't sit there and say, "Aha, I've won it," or even act that smugly. They're the ones who you only hear about on occasion in glowing terms from most other people.
My knowledge of the politics is generally limited to my ability to predict when it's a good time to leave a city before the rack or the hunting rights or the demands for prestation grow too large, and to recognize when it's a good time to get out of the way between two clans.
So, essentially, when to hold them, when to fold them, and when to walk away.
When to run away in hopes that the fires don't catch you. But yes, that's what I end up having to step up with. At least it's an interesting time to be the bourgeois.
Yes. Well, it's an interesting time to be kindred.
Well, then again, I don't imagine it's ever been boring to be a kindred.
I think sometimes have been less eventful than other.
Less eventful does not quite translate to too boring.
Oh, yes.
Because there's always someone who wants what you have, which theoretically is a good reason to have very little. I do emphasize the point theoretically, I think. But this is back into me going, oh, woe is me.
With any luck, you will have more weal and less woe.
Well, I think we have had a very, very good helping of wool already. Alas, that seems to apply most people Stoneheart has had to deal with lately. I am hopeful, so I'll make no promises to it. The questions are still pending, but if it's just a case of, well, how shall I put it, youthful extravagance, I think Stoneheart might get away with just exile.
But if it turns out to be worse, well,
Then it turns out to be worse.
let's just say I have a few choice words of my own in that case before he meets his final death. If worse.
Should I try and arrange for you the opportunity? Should it come to that?
Oh, if it comes to that, I have my own Primogen to speak to see about arranging that.
Well, I do think I get to ask, theoretically, his Primogen, make certain requests with at least authority that some of the court might pretend to.
It's nothing really poignant, more along the lines of I thought my clan was supposed to be madmen.
Now, what was the commentary I heard once? There are people who are more composed and colder than normal humans, who would be described as the exact opposite to the bourgeois temperament.
Yes.
Some of those people are Malkavians and claim that to be the key component to them being describable as such. So, as my sire put it, the bourgeois might not be the best position to suggest anyone else to be of mentally unstable condition.
Well, I will say there are some of us who are truly mad, but most of us simply have an insight into the world that others do not. I find it easier to listen to certain things that are there, but not everyone else listens to.
That's yet another from my sire. There are good reasons, and then there are good reasons you cannot grasp.
Yes. Well, it sounds like your sire and I would likely get along.
Provided you would get him to discuss matters with you.
Well, yes.
He has left an impression, but he's also left an impression on the fact that he might not be the most talkative of my clan.
Yes. Well, in any case,
I'll thank you for your time and the conversation.
Yeah, likewise.
And hope to bore you at another time later.
Oh, it was not boring, just at times older memories surfaced and tried to vie for dominance.
Understandable. Please do you let your Primogen know that I'd like to have a word about the possible cooperation as far as the domain securities go. At his leisure and in no great hurry.
Yes, I will let him know next time I see him.
Thank you for your time. I shall be looking forward to a horrendous suggestion of money I owe you. Or will owe you if I approve of the bill.
Yes. But, well, I may be able to give you a discount for other considerations.
Well, there might be other considerations I'll be willing to discuss.
Well, among other things, possible training. Although, when it comes to training, there might be a bit of a two-way street we can agree upon in some areas.
Possibly.
And, I once met a Bruja prince who had learned Auspex, and he found it very useful. Because before that, about the only way he had of telling if something was alive or dead was to try and stab it.
I do prefer the way one gentleman I met in Europe went about it.
Yes.
Bare your fangs, spread your hands wide, and foam at the mouth. If it starts running, it's alive. If it starts running and screams of frenzy, it's not only undead, but it also knows that you're a Bruja.
Oh, he was actually for a Bruja, he was remarkably reserved. And at least according to one tale, he had been a gladiator in Rome. Not certain if that was an accurate tale, but that's one I heard.
Well, rumors and truth.
Exactly.
Occasionally cross the waters, but are never the same river.
But yes, Al, had a good, look at the time, good morning to you.
Good morning, I'll have to hurry to my...
Oh, yes. At least now you have domain to hunt in.
Well, so far the city has been very, very giving even to one without a domain.
Well, I've fortunately very rarely have to actually hunt. It's a useful trick to make your food come to you.
I prefer to hunt merely because, well, so far I do not find myself to have mastered the skill.
Understandable. I simply find I prefer to know the temperament of who I feed upon ahead of time.
Personal credo there goes along the lines I previously tried to be the best I could be as a human. Now I'll have to settle to try and be the best I can be as a kindred.
Oh, that is honestly something worth aspiring to.
Hopefully it'll amount to something at some point.
Well, as I understand it, the first 50 years are the ones in which you're most likely to be killed. If you make it that far, you are more likely to survive the next 100. That said, usually survival involves a certain amount of
less than stellar character?
Well, I was thinking more that I found that the one, or at least it seems to me, the ones who are most likely to survive to a long age are the ones who are least likely to change in themselves. There's a reason that he actually pulls out his tarot deck and flips up a card that has someone in the sort of traditional representation of death on it. Says there's a reason this represents change.
Well, a person who changes is more difficult to predict. I would imagine one elders prefer the ability to predict yourself.
Yes. But
But
he actually gets up and makes sure,
as does Creel.
yeah, and actually walks Creel to the door. Briefly turns to Stacy and says, "Do I have any more appointments before dawn?" And she says, "Nope." It's like, and he says, "Well, then we can finish back at the house." He turns back to Creel and says, "Oh, I have a few things to lock up, so you don't need to wait for me."
Thank you, and good morning. Sorry to have kept you here so long. And Creel.
Usually stay here till close to dawn, anyways. And with that, he starts getting ready to head to bed.